Have you ever noticed how the harder you try to avoid discomfort, the more uncomfortable your life becomes? There's a reason for this, and once you see it, everything shifts. Let me show you what I mean.
This pattern shows up everywhere in our lives. We stay in jobs that drain us because looking for a new position feels scary. We avoid difficult conversations because conflict feels uncomfortable. We stick with familiar routines because change feels uncertain. We say yes to things we don't want to do because saying no feels awkward. Each time we choose comfort over authenticity, we trade a small temporary discomfort for a larger ongoing discomfort. Here's what most people don't understand. Discomfort isn't a malfunction of your system that needs to be fixed. It's intelligence. Your capacity to feel discomfort is one of your most sophisticated guidance systems, designed to help you navigate complex situations, grow beyond your current limitations, and align with what matters most to you. Think about it this way. Discomfort often arises when there's a gap between your current reality and something your deeper wisdom knows is possible for you. That nervous feeling before the presentation isn't just random anxiety. It's your system's way of alerting you that this situation matters, that there's potential for growth, that you're stepping beyond your familiar territory into a space where expansion is possible. The problem isn't that you feel discomfort. The problem is that you've been taught to interpret discomfort as a warning signal that something is wrong, rather than recognizing it as information that something important is happening. When you understand discomfort as a compass rather than a roadblock, everything changes. Consider how a muscle grows stronger. It doesn't happen through comfort and ease, it happens through the controlled application of resistance and stress. The muscle fibers actually break down during exercise, creating temporary discomfort and then rebuild stronger than before. Your emotional and psychological growth follows a similar pattern. The challenges that feel uncomfortable in the moment are often the very experiences that develop your resilience, wisdom, and capacity for greater joy and success. But here's where it gets interesting. When you try to avoid discomfort, you're not actually avoiding it. You're just delaying it and often making it worse. The conversation you avoid becomes more difficult over time. The decision you postpone becomes more complicated. The growth opportunity you resist becomes a recurring pattern that shows up in different forms until you finally address it. This creates what we might call the comfort trap, a cycle where avoiding short-term discomfort creates long-term suffering. You become increasingly sensitive to any form of discomfort. Your tolerance for uncertainty decreases, and your world gradually shrinks to include only what feels safe and familiar. Meanwhile, everything that could bring meaning, growth, and genuine fulfillment remains outside your comfort zone, seemingly out of reach. The invitation here isn't to seek out discomfort for its own sake, but to develop a more mature and nuanced relationship with it. Instead of seeing discomfort as the enemy to be defeated, you can begin to see it as a teacher to be respected, a guide to be followed, and sometimes even a friend to be welcomed. Let me tell you about a young monk who came to his teacher complaining about the discomfort of meditation practice. Every time he sat to meditate, his legs would ache, his mind would race with thoughts, and he would feel restless and agitated. He had been practicing for months, but instead of finding the peace he expected, he seemed to be encountering more discomfort than ever before.
"Master," he said, "I thought meditation was supposed to bring peace and comfort, but the more I practice, the more uncomfortable I become. Am I doing something wrong?" The teacher smiled and led the young monk to the monastery garden, where a beautiful lotus flower was blooming in a pond. "Tell me," the teacher said, "what do you see?" "I see a beautiful lotus flower," the monk replied. "And where does this lotus grow?" the teacher asked. The monk looked more closely. "It grows in the mud at the bottom of the pond." "Exactly," the teacher nodded. "The lotus doesn't grow despite the mud, it grows because of the mud. The mud provides the nutrients, the resistance, the very conditions that allow the lotus to develop its strength and beauty. If you planted a lotus in clear, clean water, it would die. The teacher paused, letting this sink in. Your discomfort in meditation is like the mud for the lotus. It's not a sign that something is wrong, it's a sign that transformation is happening. The restlessness you feel is your mind learning to settle. The physical discomfort is your body learning to find stillness. The agitation is your spirit learning to find peace. He continued, most people think that spiritual practice should immediately make them feel better, more comfortable, more peaceful. But this is like expecting the lotus to bloom without ever touching the mud. The very experiences you're trying to avoid are the ones that will develop the qualities you seek. Over the following weeks, the teacher gave the monk a series of exercises designed to help him change his relationship with discomfort. Instead of trying to escape uncomfortable sensations during meditation, he learned to investigate them with curiosity. Instead of judging his restless thoughts, he learned to observe them with compassion. Instead of wishing his experience were different, he learned to be present with whatever was actually happening. Something remarkable began to occur. As the monk stopped fighting against discomfort and started working with it, the discomfort itself began to transform. It didn't disappear, but it lost its threatening quality. What had once felt like an enemy began to feel like a teacher. What had once felt like a problem began to feel like information. The teacher's final lesson was the most profound. The goal isn't to eliminate discomfort, he told the monk. The goal is to develop such a spacious and compassionate heart that you can hold any experience with love. When you can be fully present with discomfort without being consumed by it, you discover that discomfort and comfort are not opposites. They're both just temporary experiences arising and passing away in the vast space of your awareness. This story illustrates a fundamental truth about human growth and development. The very experiences we try to avoid are often the ones that contain the greatest potential for transformation. Discomfort isn't a bug in the system of human experience, it's a feature. It's how we develop resilience, wisdom, courage, and compassion.
Here's what transforms everything about becoming comfortable with discomfort. The goal isn't to stop feeling uncomfortable, it's to stop being uncomfortable with discomfort itself. Most people approach discomfort like they're trying to solve a math problem. They want to find the right formula to make it go away quickly and efficiently. They try breathing techniques to calm anxiety, positive thinking to overcome fear, or distraction methods to avoid feeling difficult emotions. While these strategies can be helpful temporarily, they miss the deeper opportunity that discomfort provides. Let me tell you about Marcus, a successful entrepreneur who came to me because he was paralyzed by the fear of failure. Every time he considered expanding his business or taking on bigger challenges, he would be overwhelmed by anxiety about what might go wrong. He had tried every technique he could find to eliminate this fear: meditation apps, affirmations, visualization exercises, even therapy, but the anxiety persisted. During one of our conversations, I asked him to try something different. Instead of trying to get rid of the anxiety, I invited him to become curious about it. What does this feeling actually feel like in your body? I asked. If you weren't trying to change it or escape it, what would you notice about it? At first, he was resistant. But I don't want to feel anxious, he protested. I want to feel confident and calm. I understand, I replied. But what if the anxiety is trying to tell you something important? What if it's not a problem to be solved, but information to be received? Reluctantly, he agreed to experiment. Instead of fighting the anxiety when it arose, he began to investigate it. He noticed that it showed up as a tight sensation in his chest, accompanied by rapid thoughts about potential catastrophes. But when he stopped trying to push it away and simply observed it with curiosity, something unexpected happened. The anxiety began to reveal layers of information. Underneath the surface fear of failure, he discovered a deep caring about his work and its impact. Underneath the worry about making mistakes, he found a commitment to excellence and integrity.
underneath the paralysis, he found a natural caution that was actually trying to help him make better decisions. This realization changed everything. Instead of seeing anxiety as his enemy, he began to see it as an ally that was trying to protect what mattered most to him. Instead of trying to eliminate it, he learned to dialogue with it, to understand what it was trying to communicate, and to include its wisdom in his decision-making process. The result wasn't that he stopped feeling anxious, it was that he stopped being anxious about feeling anxious. The meta-discomfort, the discomfort about having discomfort, dissolved, and with it, much of the suffering that had been paralyzing him. He could feel the nervousness about a big business decision and still move forward with clarity and purpose. This reveals the deeper truth about discomfort. Most of our suffering doesn't come from the original uncomfortable feeling, but from our resistance to that feeling. When you feel anxious and then become anxious about being anxious, you're experiencing two layers of discomfort instead of one. When you feel sad and then judge yourself for feeling sad, you're adding emotional resistance to emotional pain.
The revolutionary insight is that you can feel discomfort without being uncomfortable about it. You can experience anxiety without being anxious about the anxiety. You can feel fear without being afraid of the fear. This might sound paradoxical, but it's the key to genuine freedom. When you stop resisting discomfort, several remarkable things happen. First, the discomfort often transforms or dissipates naturally, like clouds passing through the sky. Second, even when it remains, it loses its compelling, overwhelming quality. Third, you discover that you're far more resilient and capable than you realized. And fourth, you become available to learn from the discomfort rather than just endure it. This is what we mean by becoming comfortable with discomfort. You're not becoming numb or indifferent to difficult experiences. You're developing the capacity to be present with whatever arises without adding unnecessary layers of resistance and reactivity. You're learning to surf the waves of experience rather than being tumbled by them. From this place of acceptance and presence, discomfort becomes a doorway rather than a wall. It becomes information rather than intimidation. It becomes a teacher rather than a tyrant. And paradoxically, when you stop trying so hard to feel comfortable all the time, you often end up feeling much more at ease with the full spectrum of human experience. Foundation 1. Awareness. The first foundation for becoming comfortable with discomfort is developing the ability to recognize and observe uncomfortable feelings without immediately moving into reaction or avoidance mode. This awareness isn't about analyzing or understanding discomfort intellectually. It's about learning to be present with it directly and intimately. Most people have such a strong habit of avoiding discomfort that they're not even aware when it's arising. They might feel a twinge of anxiety and immediately reach for their phone, feel a moment of sadness and immediately try to cheer themselves up, or sense conflict in a relationship and immediately change the subject. These automatic responses happen so quickly that the original feeling barely registers in consciousness. The practice begins with learning to pause in the space between feeling discomfort and reacting to it. This pause doesn't need to be long. Even a few seconds can make a profound difference. In that pause, you can notice, oh, there's some discomfort arising right now. I can feel it in my body. I can notice my mind's immediate urge to escape or fix this feeling. This awareness practice is like developing a new muscle. At first, you might only notice discomfort after you've already reacted to it. You might realize hours later that you avoided a difficult conversation or procrastinated on an important task because of uncomfortable feelings. But gradually, you'll begin to catch these patterns earlier and earlier until eventually you can remain present with discomfort as it's actually happening. Body awareness is particularly important in this foundation. Discomfort almost always has a physical component. Tension in the shoulders, tightness in the chest, butterflies in the stomach, a clenched jaw. Learning to feel these sensations directly, without the story your mind creates about what they mean, is a crucial skill. The sensation itself is usually much more manageable than the narrative of catastrophe or inadequacy that often accompanies it.
As you develop this foundation, you'll begin to notice the difference between discomfort and suffering. Discomfort is the direct experience of challenging sensations or emotions. Suffering is the additional layer of resistance, judgment, and story that you add to the discomfort. When you can be present with pure discomfort without adding layers of suffering, you discover that discomfort is much more workable than you imagined. Foundation 2. Investigation. The second foundation involves approaching discomfort with curiosity rather than resistance. Instead of immediately trying to escape or eliminate uncomfortable feelings, you learn to investigate them with the same interest you might bring to studying a fascinating natural phenomenon. This investigation isn't about analyzing discomfort from a safe intellectual distance. It's about getting close enough to really understand what's happening in your direct experience. When anxiety arises, instead of immediately trying to calm down, you might ask, what does this anxiety actually feel like? Where do I feel it in my body? What thoughts are accompanying it? What is it trying to tell me? Often, when you investigate discomfort closely, you discover that it's not as solid or permanent as it initially seemed. Feelings that feel overwhelming from a distance often reveal themselves to be more manageable when you examine them up close. You might notice that what felt like one big uncomfortable feeling is actually several smaller sensations and emotions that are more easily workable. Investigation also reveals the intelligence within discomfort. That nervous feeling before an important conversation might be your system's way of alerting you that this interaction matters and deserves your full attention. The sadness you feel when something ends might be honoring the value of what you're releasing. The frustration you feel when things don't go according to plan might be pointing you toward what you truly care about. This foundation also involves investigating your beliefs and assumptions about discomfort itself. Many people carry unconscious beliefs like, I shouldn't feel this way, strong people don't get anxious, or if I'm uncomfortable, something must be wrong. These beliefs create additional layers of suffering on top of the original discomfort. By questioning these beliefs and investigating your actual experience, you often discover that discomfort is much more neutral than you thought. It's not good or bad, right or wrong, it's simply information about your inner state and your relationship to your circumstances. This investigation naturally leads to a more open and curious relationship with all aspects of your experience. Foundation 3. Acceptance. The third foundation is learning to accept discomfort without immediately trying to change it. This doesn't mean being passive or resigned. It means acknowledging what's actually happening in your experience without adding resistance or judgment to it. Acceptance is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean liking discomfort or wanting it to continue. It doesn't mean being a doormat or tolerating harmful situations. It simply means acknowledging reality as it is in this moment, rather than insisting that it should be different. When you practice acceptance with discomfort, you're essentially saying, yes, this is what I'm experiencing right now. I don't necessarily like it, but I'm willing to be present with it. This simple shift from resistance to acceptance often dramatically reduces the intensity of difficult experiences.
Think of acceptance like learning to flow in water. When you panic and fight against the water, you think. But when you relax and accept the water's support, you naturally float. Similarly, when you fight against uncomfortable emotions, they often intensify and persist. When you accept them with a relaxed presence, they often transform or dissolve naturally. This foundation also involves accepting your own reactions to discomfort. If you feel anxious and then judge yourself for feeling anxious, you can practice accepting both the anxiety and the self-judgment. If you feel afraid and then criticize yourself for being weak, you can practice accepting both the fear and the self-criticism. This meta-acceptance prevents you from creating additional layers of suffering. Acceptance also includes accepting the timing of your growth process. You might want to become completely comfortable with discomfort immediately, but real transformation happens gradually. Accepting where you are right now, while remaining open to growth, creates the conditions for sustainable change. As you develop this foundation, you'll discover that acceptance isn't something you do once and then you're done. It's an ongoing practice, a moment-by-moment choice to meet your experience with openness rather than resistance. Each time you choose acceptance over resistance, you're building your capacity to be present with whatever life brings. Foundation 4, response. The fourth foundation is learning to respond to discomfort from a place of wisdom and choice, rather than reacting from unconscious patterns. This means developing the ability to feel discomfort fully while still making decisions that align with your deeper values and long-term well-being. Many people think that being comfortable with discomfort means becoming passive or indifferent. But the goal isn't to become unresponsive to difficult situations. It's to become more skillful in how you respond. When you're not controlled by the need to avoid discomfort, you become free to choose responses that serve your highest good. This foundation involves distinguishing between responses and reactions. Reactions are automatic, unconscious patterns that arise from the need to escape discomfort as quickly as possible. Responses are conscious choices that take into account both your immediate experience and your broader understanding of what's wise and beneficial. For example, if you feel anxious about giving a presentation, a reaction might be to avoid the presentation altogether or to give it while completely suppressed and disconnected from your authentic self. A response might be to acknowledge the anxiety, understand what it's trying to tell you, prepare thoroughly, and then give the presentation while remaining present with whatever feelings arise. This foundation also involves learning to take action while feeling uncomfortable. Many people wait until they feel confident or certain before taking important steps, but this approach often leads to endless delays and missed opportunities. When you can act from a place of presence and wisdom, while simultaneously feeling nervous, uncertain, or scared, you become capable of extraordinary things. Response also includes knowing when discomfort is signaling that action is needed to address a harmful situation versus when it's simply indicating that you're growing beyond your comfort zone. Both types of discomfort are valuable, but they call for different responses. Learning to distinguish between them is a crucial aspect of emotional wisdom.
As you develop this foundation, you'll discover that you can feel anxious and still speak up for what you believe in. You can feel uncertain and still make important decisions. You can feel scared and still pursue meaningful goals. Your emotional state doesn't have to dictate your choices. You can include your feelings as information while making decisions from your deeper wisdom. Now that you understand the 4 foundations, let's explore specific ways to integrate these principles into your daily life. Remember, becoming comfortable with discomfort is a practice that develops over time through consistent engagement with challenging experiences. Daily practice. Morning discomfort check-in. Start each day by honestly assessing what you might be avoiding due to discomfort. Is there a conversation you need to have, a decision you've been postponing, a creative project you've been putting off? Rather than immediately trying to solve these situations, simply acknowledge what you're avoiding and why. Micro challenges. Throughout the day, look for small opportunities to practice being with discomfort. This might mean maintaining eye contact during an awkward moment, sitting with hunger for a few minutes before eating, or feeling the full impact of disappointment when plans change. These micro practices build your tolerance for discomfort gradually and safely. Evening reflection. Before sleep, review the day's experiences with curiosity. When did you feel uncomfortable today? How did you respond? What did you learn about your patterns of avoidance or engagement? This reflection isn't about judging yourself, but about building awareness and learning from your experience. Working with specific discomforts. Anxiety and fear. When anxiety arises, resist the immediate urge to escape or fix it. Instead, locate the feeling in your body. Notice the physical sensations without the mental story about what they mean. Breathe naturally and ask, what is this feeling trying to protect or alert me to? Often anxiety contains valuable information about what matters most to you. Sadness and grief. These emotions often arise when something valuable is ending or has been lost. Rather than rushing to feel better, allow yourself to fully feel the weight of what you're grieving. Sadness is often love with nowhere to go. Honoring it fully actually helps it transform naturally rather than getting stuck. Anger and frustration. These feelings usually indicate that something important to you is being threatened or blocked. Instead of immediately trying to calm down or acting out destructively, investigate what values or boundaries are being violated. Anger often contains important information about what needs to change. Uncertainty and confusion. These uncomfortable states often arise when you're in a period of growth or transition. Rather than rushing to find answers or make decisions prematurely, practice being present with not knowing. Confusion often precedes clarity, and uncertainty often precedes breakthrough. Advanced practices. Discomfort meditation. Set aside time to deliberately sit with whatever discomfort is present in your life without trying to fix or change it. This might be physical discomfort, emotional pain, or mental agitation. The practice is simply to be present with whatever arises while maintaining a compassionate awareness.
Uncomfortable conversations. Identify relationship issues you've been avoiding and practice bringing them up with honesty and care. Start with smaller issues to build your confidence, then work up to more significant concerns. The goal isn't to create conflict, but to practice being authentic even when it feels risky. Growth edge challenges. Regularly engage in activities that stretch your comfort zone in healthy ways. This might be taking a class in something you're not naturally good at, speaking up in group settings, or pursuing goals that feel slightly beyond your current capabilities. Discomfort journaling. Write about your experiences with discomfort without trying to solve or analyze them. Simply describe what you felt, how you responded, and what you learned. Over time, you'll begin to see patterns and develop greater self-understanding. Integration challenges. As you practice becoming comfortable with discomfort, you may encounter several common obstacles. Social pressure. Others might not understand your willingness to engage with difficult experiences. They might try to rescue you from discomfort or judge you for not avoiding what they would avoid. Remember that your relationship with discomfort is personal and doesn't require others' approval. Old patterns. Years of discomfort avoidance have created strong neural pathways that will take time to change. Be patient with yourself when you automatically fall back into old patterns. Each moment of awareness is progress, even if you don't respond perfectly. Misunderstanding the practice. This isn't about seeking out unnecessary suffering or tolerating abusive situations. It's about developing a healthier relationship with the inevitable discomforts that arise in any meaningful life. Always use your wisdom to distinguish between growth-promoting challenges and harmful situations. Perfectionism. Some people approach this practice with the same perfectionist energy they bring to everything else, trying to become perfectly comfortable with all discomfort immediately. This creates additional pressure and defeats the purpose. The practice itself should be held lightly and with self-compassion. As you continue developing your capacity to be comfortable with discomfort, you'll notice profound changes in how you navigate life. Decisions that once felt impossible become manageable. Conversations you once avoided become opportunities for deeper connection. Goals that once seemed too risky become exciting challenges. Expanded possibilities. When you're no longer controlled by the need to avoid discomfort, your world naturally expands. You become willing to have difficult conversations that improve your relationships. You pursue opportunities that align with your values even when they feel scary. You speak your truth even when your voice shakes. You try new things even when you might fail. This expansion isn't dramatic or sudden. It's a gradual widening of what feels possible. You might notice that you're more willing to disagree with someone you respect, more likely to try a new hobby that interests you, or more open to changing careers if your current job isn't fulfilling. Each time you choose growth over comfort, you increase your capacity for future growth. Emotional resilience. Developing comfort with discomfort naturally builds emotional resilience.
When you know you can handle difficult feelings, you become less afraid of them arising. This doesn't mean you welcome suffering, but you're no longer terrorized by the possibility of experiencing challenging emotions.
This resilience shows up in unexpected ways. You might find that criticism affects you less because you're comfortable with the discomfort of having your work challenged. You might discover that uncertainty feels more like an adventure than a threat because you've learned to be present with not knowing what will happen next. Authentic relationships. When you're comfortable with discomfort, your relationships naturally become more authentic. You're willing to share what's really going on with you rather than presenting a polished facade. You're able to hear feedback without becoming defensive. You can express disagreement without fearing the relationship will end. This authenticity often initially feels risky because it involves vulnerability. But over time, you discover that relationships built on authenticity are far more satisfying and sustainable than those built on mutual comfort and avoidance. Creative expression. Creativity requires a willingness to venture into unknown territory, to make mistakes, to potentially create something terrible in service of eventually creating something beautiful. When you're comfortable with the discomfort of not knowing how something will turn out, you become naturally more creative and innovative. This shows up not just in artistic endeavors, but in problem solving, communication, and life design. You become more willing to experiment, to try unconventional approaches, and to learn through trial and error rather than waiting until you know exactly what to do. Leadership qualities. Comfort with discomfort is one of the essential qualities of effective leadership. Leaders must make decisions with incomplete information, have difficult conversations, navigate conflict, and guide others through uncertain times. When you're comfortable with these inherently uncomfortable aspects of leadership, you become naturally more effective at inspiring and guiding others. People are drawn to those who can remain calm and present during difficult times. Your comfort with discomfort becomes a gift to others, showing them that challenging experiences can be met with grace and wisdom rather than panic and avoidance. Spiritual development. Many spiritual traditions recognize that growth happens at the edge of comfort. Whether it's sitting in meditation while your mind races, practicing forgiveness when you'd rather hold a grudge, or surrendering control when you'd rather force outcomes. Spiritual development requires a willingness to be uncomfortable. When you're comfortable with discomfort, spiritual practices become opportunities for growth rather than challenges to endure. You can sit with difficult emotions during meditation, face your shadow aspects with curiosity rather than shame, and remain open to transformation even when it feels destabilizing. Life satisfaction. Paradoxically, when you stop trying to be comfortable all the time, you often end up feeling much more satisfied with your life. This happens because you're living in alignment with your deeper values, rather than making decisions based on what feels safest or easiest in the moment. You pursue meaningful work, even when it's challenging. You build deep relationships, even when they require vulnerability. You engage with causes you care about, even when the problems feel overwhelming. This alignment between your actions and your values creates a sense of integrity and purpose that goes far beyond temporary comfort. The ultimate gift of becoming comfortable with discomfort is freedom. Freedom from the tyranny of needing to feel good all the time, freedom to pursue what matters most to you, regardless of how scary it might feel initially, and freedom to be fully present with the rich complexity of human experience. This freedom doesn't mean you become reckless or indifferent to genuine threats. It means you develop the wisdom to distinguish between discomfort that signals danger and discomfort that signals growth opportunity. You learn to be appropriately cautious while remaining open to expansion. As you continue this practice, remember that the goal isn't to eliminate discomfort from your life. It's to develop such a spacious and resilient heart that you can hold any experience with presence and grace. When you can be fully present with discomfort without being overwhelmed by it, you discover that discomfort and comfort are not enemies, but dance partners in the grand choreography of a fully lived life. This understanding transforms not just how you relate to challenging experiences, but how you relate to existence itself. You begin to see that the full spectrum of human experience, including its difficult and painful aspects, is not a problem to be solved, but a gift to be received with wisdom, courage, and an open heart.